Kia ora koutou, ko Victoria McLennan toko ingoa, but as you will all know, please call me Vic. And welcome to this, our last Fireside chat of 2024. And I'm really excited to be joined by Engie today to discuss such an important set of topics, which is just awesome. I don't know why I've got an extra Vic on there at the moment, but we'll get rid of that. Lots of technology things overwhelming us in GA today. But welcome. Thanks for joining me.
No, thank you for having me today, Vic, and the IT Professionals membership. It's wonderful to be able to have a conversation, which is wonderful.
And you've just been traveling, so you've probably got lots of great things that you can share with us while we're speaking. But to help us all get to know you a little bit better, can you introduce yourself and give us your short potted history of your career as well?
Yes, I'm happy to do that. Kia ora koutou, ko ai ko Engie Matene tōku ingoa, he uri au o ngā hapu o Ngāti Rangi, Ngāti Moerua me ngā hapu o Te Hikatu. So hello everyone, my name is Engie Matene. I hail from the hapu of Ngāti Rangi, Ngāti Moerua me ngā hapu o Te Hikatu, which is from the Whāia North and Te Tai Tokerau. And also blessed to be able to live and work from our ancestral lands as well, which has been part of the journey for me. A bit about my short-plotted history or career in IT. I should say I probably started early in my career, but surprisingly, I used to work with public service here in New Zealand first. So I used to work at Ministry of Education, helping with their websites back in the day when they used to use Sitecore. So that was my first intro into IT, I should say, as part of the Māori education strategy project team. And then I delved into MSD, Ministry of Social Development, started working in senior services, headed overseas for a bit to Melbourne, where I got to work in the, I should say it's mobile insurance, but I was in the tech support customer service of that area, and then realized while I was working in Australia, like, how is all this IT being built? Surely I should be able to get on the tools, because we're getting these like $10,000, $100,000 projects being built, and I'm like, they are not even up to scratch. How's this done? So I decided to move back to Aotearoa, New Zealand, signed up with the Inspire Dev Academy at the time, went through their boot camp, which I can just say is phenomenal for anyone who is wanting to go from zero code knowledge to that of a junior developer. And this was at the age of 30, by the way, team. So I came into my software engineering background quite later in life. And then in the past 7 years, I've had the privilege of working with Arataki Systems, so Lee Tumutumu, and the Arataki Trails app, where I was a developer in their team. I got to work alongside Dev Academy again and rewrote their foundational curriculum, because I thought, well, it's fresh in my mind. This could do with the rewrites. And then delved into TradeMe. So I joined the delivery experience team, where I worked on DevOps in the early days and helped create the testing suite for 22 microservices or mini applications that make up TradeMe's at Stack. And then more recently delved into the delivery experience team with Flick Electric. So started working in the engineering team in the power industry, which is just, exposes you to the challenges that we have with power in Aotearoa, which we'll come into shortly as well. And I guess most recently, I have now founded two particular entities, I should say. I've founded He Tangata Tech, which is where I run local tech support, so community tech support, and I run that alongside health care providers, schools, really to help onboard community to technology while teaching them how to use their hardware. And then I'm also working or co-founded Mātou, which is our collective, where we're building Indigenous digital infrastructure to support communities to be self-sovereign, really. So it's a little high level of some of the pieces of work that I'm a part of at the moment.
It's just wow. First of all, wāhine Māori in tech. Secondly, that you chose to come into tech as a career, which, after already having a career, which is fantastic. And people tell me I'm busy and juggling too many things, but it sounds like you're doing an amazing, spread of different important passion and infrastructure projects. So thank you for sharing that. Now, there are so many topics for us to discuss today, but how about we talk about digital identity first? So tell us about your mahi and your thoughts in this space.
Absolutely. So I think we'll start off with my mahi because it'll make sense in terms of my thoughts behind that. So in 2022, I joined a small team and we built out a feature, a digital identity feature, which is built off of whakapapa. So as Māori, the way we know how we connect to one another and to our whenua, our land, is through our connections, right? Through whakapapa. So one of the platforms we've been building on has been the Aho platform. Now, it's an open source archival system, and really the idea was to take where our people are capturing whakapapa and using digital identity tools. So we've chosen in this aspect to take Cardano blockchain's Atala Prism, so using blockchain identity systems in order to build out the ability for families, for whānau, for hapu, to be able to, one, use the platform to capture your genealogy, and then by building your own trust and verification processes, which we help support you to do, you can also issue your own membership credentials or VCs that show who you connect to, who your hapu are, and any other pieces of information that you want to share. So that's the work that I've been part of, or the team that I've been part of. And the reason why digital identity is so critical, and I think particularly for us as Māori or as community is because identity or our access to our identity is how we can verify who we are in industry and in across society, right? And I just think from the day we are born through to the day we get our driver's license, through to when we turn 18, right? We've got all these pieces of identification that are currently all umbrellaed across our government system, right? So our goal here is to build our own digital identity management system, which is what we've been able to build the feature of. And from this, work with our communities to show that not only can you be your own kaitiaki, not only can you be your own administrators for your own systems, but you should be able to control who has access to your data, who doesn't, who you share your information with and who you don't, what kind of information are you sharing. So all of this is what we've built into the application as well, our platform, which all sits under the umbrella of ensuring that it's decentralized. So it's really important that we don't hold control of your information or tools. We provide you access to that. So making sure we're decentralized, making sure that it's data sovereignty in practice. So I know there are lots of frameworks and principles around data sovereignty, but we've actually built that into the technology as well, and what that looks like in the platform. And then thirdly was, decentralized, data sovereignty, and open source. Very critical.
Very important.
Really important for us, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think we will understand what open source means, not just technically, but also from community engagement and how, again, it's about not holding all the keys and power of access in these tools. So that's what we're trying to build. So that's the digital identity piece, I believe, which is a critical piece of digital infrastructure, which is the bigger vision for us and what we're trying to build.
I have one question from the Q&A, and thank you, Andrew, for kicking us off with questions on the Q&A. Kia ora, Engie. What is the name of the blockchain system you use for the whakapapa/digital identity system? If you don't know the answer to that right now, Engie, we can loop back, but do you know what blockchain technology you've been using?
Yes, so it's based on Cardano blockchain, and it used to be called Atala Prism, so that's the particular SDK that Cardano used to use, but I believe they've transitioned now over to a new name, which is Hyperledger Identis, but it's the same piece of technology. So it's built on Cardano blockchain, which we've chosen on purpose as well as a technology that aligns to our values, and also the vision of decentralization, but at such a broader international scale, which is why we decided to align with this particular technology. I hope that answers your question. Yeah.
Say it well. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, everything you've said is just amazing. And many people on this call would have heard me for years saying this is kind of where we need to go with digital identity. So it's fantastic to see that there is an initiative here in Aotearoa solving these challenges and using open source technology. So congratulations on that. So where do you see the greatest opportunities for solving our digital identity challenges lie moving forward?
Oh, that's a great question. I think the greatest opportunities actually lies in, I think it lies in more so the digital infrastructure. But if I can come at it from the angle that I think when we think about, as our collective, when we think about digital infrastructure, it's the many moving pieces required in order to run technology. So digital infrastructure can include power, access, and sources. It can include internet access and sources. It needs to, actually, if you're going to run, as we all know. Sorry, I know I'm speaking to an audience who gets it. However, what I think the greatest opportunity is in building decentralized open source digital infrastructure that removes the financial barriers for our communities, because that's huge, right? Not only are we paying subscriptions to different video streaming services, we pay a subscription for everything from Medo to Zoom. Every single thing has a subscription fee, which is pretty much going to price out our communities who need it the most. And so, yeah, we actually think the opportunity is creating accessible community digital infrastructure that doesn't cost an arm and a leg, right? Where the focus isn't profits, where it's actually the focus is building communities to be resilient in a digital age. Wouldn't that be fantastic? But that's where we're focused on, right? And it should be available and affordable for all. But we've got to create those tools to be that way. Otherwise, if we keep building it to fulfill profit, we're going to keep having the same tools built. So we're just trying to shift that in the collective that we're trying to build. And where do we think the greatest opportunity is to be the true kaitiaki, real kaitiaki of our digital infrastructure. And that's just going to require a bit more time, effort, and energy from us.
So let's talk about digital infrastructure now, because this segues really nicely. Talk to us about your vision in this space.
Ooh. I think my vision in this space is to see digital infrastructure in the hands of community and the communities that it serves. And can you just repeat that back to me again, Vic? I went on a tangent and then I came back again.
Yeah, no, it's cool. I just wanted to ask you, first of all, about your vision for digital infrastructure and the mahi that you're involved in the digital infrastructure space. And you might want to start that by explaining what digital infrastructure means for you, and then just kind of where you're going with this, because I know this is your passion, right? This is what you've been traveling the world talking about. So yeah, tell us what it means to you.
Yeah. So my vision for digital infrastructure will be to see, and this is going to sound very loaded, but bear with me. It would be to see like economic identity available in our most remote communities. And the reason why I believe that digital infrastructure can do this, and the reason why I also believe we should be doing it for our remote communities first, is because they're the ones who are going to need it the most, truly. And we're already seeing that reflected in our day-to-days with climate crisis and what we've experienced here in New Zealand, yet alone what our Pacific cousins and experiencing in the islands through to what's happening globally. So the vision for digital infrastructure will be to get it into the hands of community. And what that looks like is where it gets exciting, because each community is different and each region and land that we connect to is different again, right? So the vision for digital infrastructure, if I can reflect back, one that we did a workshop for here in Te Tai Tokero, which I'm sure they won't mind me sharing, but I've been working closely with Whangarua Papahapu, who are overseeing the reparations or redress as part of negotiations with the Crown at the moment for 28 different hapu in the area of Whangarua. So the vision we are creating together is an independent internet infrastructure. Why? Because the internet gives them access to employment opportunities, education opportunities, but within that, they might even start with power generation. So, how do we ensure we have the power generation for our region in the far north, which, by the way, experiences daily outages like you wouldn't believe? This would not be acceptable in our urban
Right.
centres. However, this is the reality of our regions in New Zealand, particularly in our remote areas.
Mm.
So, the vision for this community is independent internet infrastructure. Now, what do we need to do to enable that? And this is what we're going to be workshopping through, right? Now, people are going to look at this like, oh, that's going to cost millions. Yeah, it is. Oh, that's going to take years. Yeah, it is. But this is the vision. So the vision is to work with community to see what they want and need and do our darnest to bring about the resources and networks that we have, both locally and globally now, as part of the Kadano community, and about bringing that to a reality, bringing those dreams to reality. And can I just say, I've just come back from Buenos Aires where I got to be part of the Cardano community who are creating the first constitution of its kind that is governing not just the blockchain technology, but also the community and people and the ecosystem around the technology. So I've been part of this group that's doing this for the first time ever. And this is a community, a global community that sees the vision for digital infrastructure in the way that we do. We may not articulate it the same, but the vision's there. So that's what I'd like to see. It's like resilient communities being able to thrive in this digital age rather than freaking scratching the surface to survive, which I truly feel is what we're experiencing at the moment.
And Engie, I know I didn't include this in the topics to discuss, but you're also involved in the Social Impact ISP Mahi, which is part of this digital infrastructure kind of story. And if anyone hasn't seen it, I interviewed Lee. Go over to digitalequity.nz, where he kind of overviewed the social impact ISP vision and what's happening in that space. Can you talk a little bit to the importance of affordable connectivity for whānau and these issues that you're describing about interruptions to services and the impact that it has for people in their lives?
Yeah, I mean, I think the need for affordable internet, like in connectivity, is it's what is it? It's so fundamental. I truly believe, and I know we talk about internet being now, almost a human right, and I'm just getting to I think we're at a point now in our current society where that is almost necessary because every single service I'm aware of, from health, education, right through our industries, they're all moving to digital services. And then yet we're moving to digital services in our most impacted regions, communities, like Te Tai Tokerau, like Te Tai Rāwhiti in the remote areas, and every other remote community that is doing it rough. Why? Because we don't have the power infrastructure in order to power our devices, yet alone get access to these digital services. And then two, you don't have affordable internet connection to be able to interact with these services. So you're expecting communities who are already struggling and don't need to state socioeconomic situations that we're all very aware of what's happening at the moment. And yet now we're having the added layer of Wi-Fi expense. We've now got the added layer of hardware costs and affordability because most up-to-date devices now are close to, if not more than, $1,000. So it's pretty much the price of a car these days, truthfully, in which people need to get around. So when you're having to balance between petrol and kai to get food or Wi-Fi to be able to work, like these are the decisions a lot of our communities are having to juggle because we don't have affordable options available to us. So those are the real challenges I see every day in the work that we do. But then the flip side to that is it's also where I've seen the most resilient communities and active, engaged communities in our regions because you've got no one else to rely on but ourselves. So I don't want to paint this harrowing picture of like poverty because it ain't that, but it's around like
it's infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you got it. It's infrastructure and access to that, right? Like genuine access to that. So that's those are the struggles we're having at the moment. And if just one person in a ministry that might be listening in that's dealing with digital services can take that away and help, like truly help our regions get this right, I just think, man, we'd be in a much better place than we are at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, and paying Elon Musk isn't the answer to every question, right?
No.
So it's quite disappointing when you hear politicians proffering that there is an answer when in fact every New Zealander deserves this access. Alex has made a comment that it sounds like the northern region is part of a third world country rather than a developed nation of Aotearoa that it's supposed to be. And yeah, I've been to Hicks Bay, Tolaga Bay, recently to visit some of our most remote communities who really do struggle with having any usable connectivity, let alone affordable usable connectivity. And so I have seen firsthand how resilient these communities are, as you were describing. So thank you for sharing that. That was great.
Yeah.
So let's move on to just talking a little bit about, you've described some of the biggest challenges here in Aotearoa already and within the digital technology world. Are there any other particular areas that, if you've got the mic or you've got the pen and you could write the policy right now, or if, as you say, if there's one person from a lead government agency who's listening, is there anything else that you'd like to really highlight in this space, challenges, especially for Māori communities particularly, to add before we move on to talking about data sovereignty, which is a massive topic in itself?
Yeah. Oh gosh, where would I start with that? I think if there's any area where we can have the biggest impact, it'll be in power and energy generation, truthfully, because without that, we literally wouldn't have technology to be able to stand up because it requires these things, right? So I think we've really truly got to go back and get the basics right, and the basics right for every community in Aotearoa. I think the comment that Alex had made earlier, I just wanted to come back to that because, can I just say, I grew up in Wellington. I was never ever privy to any of these challenges until I moved back to where my ancestral lands are here in the far north. So it took moving back for me to see that. And I'm not saying this to put down the amazing work that people out there are doing, because there is some amazing work that people are doing around, you didn't plan on this, Vic, but the work DEC is doing and trying to elevate digital equities or inequities in Aotearoa. There's also the Digital Inclusion Alliance in Lawrence. There's some great entities out there trying to do the work, but the reality is the innovation and advocacy funding is drying up, or dried up already, as we all know. So where am I going with this? If anything, it'd be, we need to bring back the innovation funding for technology in particular, because New Zealand's so far behind our international global counterparts that we've got some real work to do. But then on the flip side, we've got global communities who work in technology that want to support us. They want to help. They've got the expertise from power generation to infrastructure to hardware and everything in between that they want to bring this support to Aotearoa. So my question is, one, why aren't we tapping into that type of support? And two, can we bring the innovation funding back? Because I think it's going to be the only way we help pivot and become creative in like this new future that is changing on the daily. It ain't monthly or yearly, right? It's changing daily, if not weekly. So we've just got to move our processes and procedures to suit a modern age, if that makes sense. Yeah. Sorry if I'm getting a little preachy.
Oh, it's all good.
Okay.
I do have a quick question from Chris, who's asking whether you have any views on the Zero Data Initiative. And funnily enough, when we joined this in our pre-chat, I said to Engie, I'm writing to Minister Costello right now, I'm writing to her because she said publicly recently that they're deploying QR codes to help people learn about good habits around smoking. And so I'm writing to her to say those QR codes need to point to zerodata.gov.nz slash wherever to ensure that people can actually, on their phones, if they don't have any network data available, they can still access the government website that's going to be deployed from. So this is a hot topic for me today, Chris. So Chris is wondering whether you have any views about the Zero Data Initiative, and I don't know whether you're across it at all, but it's basically so that if you don't have cell phone data available, you can still access core government digital services, and the government is paying for the internet connection for that transaction. So just for you going to the Ministry of Health site or the MB site or the MSD site, government fund free access to some services on those sites via the Zero Data Initiative. Have you come across that at all, Engie?
Not the Zero Data Initiative, no, but interesting. If it's like, you know, whether the rates for free, my concern is that is government sponsored websites where the services truly are and where we need access to, or is that just the information to then go and access the services which we need data for anyway? So that's what I'd like to reflect back, is like, Zero Data Initiative for who? For access to government systems or for access to services in our regions? Because I prefer the later.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer, and it's a really interesting complex. I'm often challenged by people about why is DECA supporting the Zero Data Initiative, but actually it's providing something in the face of where there was nothing. And we've had amazing feedback from tamariki who do use it because they run out of cell phone data and then they need to access particularly MSD and Ministry of Health for services. But in that feedback, we also had feedback that NZTA should be on there because they want to do their driver's license stuff, and that should be free for them to access. So it's been interesting to get the feedback from tamariki about it. Anyway, we go off piste and we're running out of time, but I do want to ask you about data sovereignty. So here in Aotearoa, we tend to talk about Māori data sovereignty, but let's speak more broadly about Indigenous data sovereignty. And it's a topic that's been used as a bit of a political lever for some time. It's often misunderstood, even by those of us who work in digital technology. So we're not the only nation that's tackling solutions in this space. You've just been, as you said, to Buenos Aires. What are your observations in the Indigenous data sovereignty landscape?
Yeah, really happy to share my views, and also want to share it with the caveat that respectfully share it even with it might be opposing to other people's views or the work that they're doing too. So I just want to acknowledge that I'm one person, take it with a grain of salt. But from what I've noticed, I believe with data sovereignty in particular, there's been a real push and a focus, I believe, in Aotearoa around the frameworks and the principles. However, what are the actual technological, like what's the technology we're building with those in mind, if that makes sense? So data sovereignty, I believe, I think there's where we know a lot about it, the frameworks are there, but we need to be building more data sovereign tools, and it can be the most basic, simplest tools that we can think of, but building it in a way that puts data in the hands of your users, not in your hands. That's going to be really critical, I think. So whilst there's lots of understanding and written papers about it, I'd like to see a lot more implementation, a lot more technology built with data sovereignty in mind. But also, because it's definitely doable. It's just, you've got to think about the way we're building code in a different way. So that's why we need more of it. Yeah, we need to build more things. Less talking than building.
Yeah, and maybe that's the phase that we're going into. So I also wanted to dig a little bit into, you talked about energy sustainability and the importance of solving challenges around energy here in Aotearoa. And I'm guessing that's going to be a surprise for many people, because they think, countries like India have rolling blackouts, but countries like New Zealand, we don't have anyone who can't get connected to the energy infrastructure. Can you just talk a little bit more about the mahi that you've been excited about in that space as well?
Yeah, I think the most exciting thing for me around the power and energy space too has been the community-led projects around power. So one of them I've been aware of, particularly here, which sadly has ramped down now because of government changes with MB. But there was the innovation funding that came out for renewable energy, which has been like, it's so needed here, particularly in Te Tai Tokerau, that finally one of our communities got a hand on some of the multi-year funding. That takes 3 to 5 years for any community to finally get across the line. And then within a year and a half of this new government being in, they've had all that funding removed from them. Now, I'm not here to name and shame anybody, but I just want to call that out, because when back to that comment around what we expect in modern Aotearoa, never would I have expected us for that to be okay. Particularly in an area in Te Tai Tokerau, an area in Northland, which is, I think we went without power for about 14 days post Gabriel. 14 days, no power in New Zealand, and this is for an area where only 45 minutes drive in the opposite direction towards a more gentrified area. They had theirs up and running within 3.
Wow.
Right. This is still happening in modern day Aotearoa. So what makes me excited is when we start putting the power, renewable power and energy into the hands of community, because they know their people best and know how to serve them best as well, in my opinion. But also, I'd just like to see, the way our power, the way the electricity is run here in Aotearoa, I just cannot stress enough, having worked within the industry for a couple of years, that we are bleeding, I should say, power in areas where we shouldn't be. But also we're bloating energy in areas where we shouldn't be. So I think we just need to rethink the way that we're distributing, which is tough because the way New Zealand's done their power system. But hey, everything's up for improvement and change, I think. And why not our power industry?
Yeah, and wouldn't it be amazing, we sell our excess from our solar generation back into the grid for a pitiful amount of money. But the legislation currently doesn't really enable good sharing locally. So wouldn't it be incredible if I could, instead of selling it back for a pitiful amount of money that I don't really care about, actually be able to distribute that to those in my local community who could be using that excess. So there's a lot in the market rules that kind of need to be resolved for a modern context, I guess is what you're saying, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. One, for the modern context, and also for our modern usage of power too. Like, we never would have imagined we'd be using as much as we do, but that's what the reality is. So having that available to all of our communities would be fantastic, particularly to enable technology which needs it, right? It's just going right down to the root cause for me. Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up now, and it's been fantastic having you here today and asking all these different questions. Everyone here who's listening to this and who watches the recording tomorrow because they couldn't make it are going to go away for their summer holidays. What's one thing that they could be going away thinking about doing? What should they be supporting? How do you want people to get involved in this kind of movement towards digital infrastructure, digital identity, and how do we coalesce people in this space?
Yeah. I try to be as pragmatic as possible, and honestly, it'd be my one ask for this, for those of us going on break, would be to start talking to our families, start talking to our whānau about data, about our digital identity. Do they know their websites, and do they know email addresses and passwords is what they use to be able to access, and what does that mean on the greater scale of things? Or I just think the more we can talk and normalize talking about technology and data in our homes, the better knowledge we have going out into the wider world. So if there's one thing you could do, have the conversation at home with mum, with dad, with your babies, with your children, and particularly with our kaumātua, weave them into the conversations too, because just because they're of an older generation, it would be wonderful to have them just as engaged, or able to engage in a digital future. So that would be my way. Start at home first.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Engie, for your time. I've had Rick suggest there's a project called Aki that is looking at that power sharing. So I'm going to go away and investigate that, and I'll come back to you about that one. Lots of thank yous coming up on the Q&A from people who have really enjoyed this, and I've really enjoyed talking to you today. Enjoy your summer break, and I hope you don't work too much.
Yeah. He mihi nui kia koutou anō. Thank you so much for having me. And Vic, thank you for reaching out and inviting me to be able to join you all today. Yeah. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou anō. Just thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you. And Steve Reeves, who introduced us, who's Kia ora, Engie. So lovely ending to the session. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll be kicking off these fireside chats again in the new year. We'll have a different diverse range of topics, but if there's anything you'd like me to be tackling or talking to people about, feel free to drop me an email via ceo@itp.nz. And I'm wishing everyone a fabulous holiday, and I hope you have a really lovely, relaxing break. So, ka kite.